Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd, and this will be a quick review of the first two episodes of the Ahsoka series. And I think part of the problem is just kind of franchise fatigue, because we keep seeing the same stuff over and over again, and even though it's good visually, and maybe if I hadn't seen any of the other Star Wars movies and shows and I just watched this one for the first time, it probably would have been much more fun to me because visually it's actually good. I also like how faithful it is visually to look like the old movies, like everything looks exactly the same, even though it really shouldn't be because it's not the exact same ships and it's not the same time period anymore. Now they are in the future, and so technically they don't have to make everything look exactly the same, and yet they do, but also make it look better at the same time. And it's something I wish that Star Trek would have done whenever they do prequels. They reinvent everything, everything looks totally different and much more advanced, even if it's showing the exact same ship and it's totally different to how it should be. But anyway, in Star Wars, they do not do that. They are faithful to how things should look like in the time period, so part of me really appreciates it. On the other hand, you do want to see some fresh and new things as well, so if they're now moving into the future after the old movies, then things don't have to look like the old movies anymore. Like, it should be similar, but they can show us a bigger variety and some more advanced stuff as well. Things don't have to look exactly the same, like exactly the same chairs, exactly the same props, and all of that. I mean, on the one hand, it's nice to see things I recognize. On the other hand, I would like to see some new things as well, once in a while at least. And that brings me to my main point, which is the franchise fatigue, because we keep seeing the same stuff over and over again. How many times have we seen people use lightsabers to cut up robots like butter, which looked really cool in the prequels? You know, when I first saw the prequels, I loved them visually. I think those movies have a bunch of problems with their logic and all of that, but I did enjoy them visually. It showed us so many amazing things, using the lightsabers to deflect laser bolts and cutting up robots with the lightsabers, and it all was original back then, because it's not something we saw that much of in the old movies. I think only once we saw Luke use the lightsaber to deflect something that was fired at him. And we didn't see him cut up robots and all of that. And so when we saw that stuff in the prequel, it was really fresh and original back then, and the special effects were amazing back then for that time. And so it was really exciting. But since then, we've seen that so many times, you know, in the Clone Wars cartoon and in the other Star Wars shows, that it's getting old. Like, it's no longer exciting. Even if it's done visually great, it's the same exact thing we saw so many times that it's no longer exciting, it's now boring. So I think it's part of the problem, it's part of the reason why it's so boring. We have some action scenes in the show which were totally boring to me because, oh, it's the same old stuff. Ahsoka is cutting up some droids with her lightsaber. It looks really pretty, but I've seen it so many times before that it's totally boring to me. And with all these magical powers, there is no sense of danger to anyone. They're kind of overusing it. You know, it was good when it was in good measure, when it was once in a while, when it wasn't every character that has those powers. Now that everyone has them, no one is ever in real danger. There is no sense of struggle to anyone. Even when people get stabbed with lightsabers, it's just a flesh wound. They just put a plaster on it and they're good to go. Like, we saw that in the Obi-Wan show as well. People getting repeatedly stabbed with lightsabers and treat it as if it's no big deal, like it's nothing. And the same thing in this show, we saw someone getting stabbed through the belly and they're totally fine the next scene. And so stuff like that makes it all feel less realistic, less tenseful, and really boring, because nothing is hard anymore, everything is so easy for everyone, it's all so predictable, and so that's a huge problem. And also the overall Star Wars universe became kind of boring because we keep seeing the same exact stuff over and over again, and there's so many people with Jedi powers. It also makes it illogical in context of the original movies, in which they said there are no more Jedi anymore, Luke is the last Jedi and all of that, and yet we now find out there were a whole bunch of Jedi all over the place all that time, which makes it illogical in the context of the old movies, and so that's also a problem. And also the way that every planet in the Star Wars universe, they're all on the same technological level. It's always the same whenever you go, even if things look different on another planet, it's basically all the same, and everyone knows about everything. It kind of makes the galaxy seem smaller, even though it's a big galaxy. And that's the saddest part about all of this, because the Star Wars franchise has the potential of literally infinite story potential. They can literally do anything they want. They can go to some unknown planet and show us something amazing which we've never seen before, and yet they never do that. That's the same problem I have with Star Trek. In a franchise like Star Trek and Star Wars, when you have literally millions of planets that you can visit at any time, there should be much more interesting storytelling. We should be encountering strange new things all the time, and yet we don't. We see the same exact stuff all the time. And that's really disappointing, especially in Star Wars, because, at least in Star Trek, once in a while we see some civilization which is different, which is on another level of technological advancement, or a civilization which doesn't know about other planets. So once in a while, at least we have some kind of science fiction idea, something interesting, and yet in Star Wars, everyone in the whole universe knows about everything else that is happening. It's like one big neighborhood in which everyone knows everyone, and we see the exact same stuff all the time, again and again. Again Jedi, again lightsabers, again robots. And so that's why I think it all feels so boring. And there are barely any actual stories. It's all about action and adventure, but not so much good character development or some good drama or some actual science fiction story, which I would have appreciated. And I think even The Mandalorian was better than this show, because at least in The Mandalorian, he wasn't a Jedi, he didn't have magic powers, and he didn't have a lightsaber, at least at first, and he had all these other gadgets, which we've not seen that many times before in Star Wars, and so all of that made it more interesting. The way he was fighting was more creative, it was more imaginative, because he was using all kinds of other gadgets, and not just lightsabers and magic powers all the time. And so it felt much more fresh, much more interesting, at least at first. I think eventually even that got boring, because it was the exact same gadgets all the time, and so after a while, with multiple Mandalorians all having the exact same kind of weapons and suits, it also started to become repetitive. But at least in the first season of The Mandalorian, I remember I was really enjoying it because it felt fresh, because he didn't have a lightsaber, he didn't have magic powers, and he was using other gadgets, and he was going to different kinds of planets, and we were seeing something a little bit more imaginative and creative. And after a while, even that got old, because it kind of became the same pattern over and over again. Like every episode, there was some giant monster he had to fight, and all the Mandalorians had the exact same weapons they kept using. And so why not add some more variety? Like show something new at least once in a while. Maybe not in every episode, but at least once in a while introduce something new which we haven't seen that much of. And so that, I think, is my main issue with it. So what I wish Star Wars would do is do some more creative stuff, do something new at least once in a while. I'm not saying getting rid of all the Jedi and all the lightsabers forever. I would like to see it once in a while, but not in every episode and not all the time. And not make everything so easy in any situation. Like, remember in the old movies how Luke was struggling to pick up that lightsaber with the Force the first time? That was so exciting because it was hard. If it all came to him easily right away and he was totally invincible right away, that would be boring. That's one of the problems in the sequel trilogy, when Rey is immediately the best at everything and has no problem against anyone and anything. That's why it was so boring. And so a good story should have some struggle, some drama, some tension, and some imagination, something new at least once in a while. And so that's what I would like to see in a Star Wars show. And unfortunately, the first two episodes of Ahsoka, in my opinion, were extremely boring. And all the so-called exciting stuff is stuff we've seen so many times before, which makes it not interesting at all. So hopefully maybe in the next episodes they will do some new things we haven't seen before. They're apparently going to some other nearby galaxy, which is the first time in Star Wars. So maybe in that galaxy they'll show us some new things that we haven't seen before. I hope so, otherwise it will be even more ridiculous if it's more of the same, even in a different galaxy, which they seem to imply. It's not so easy to get there, and so maybe we'll finally get to see some new and exciting things. I hope so. If not, that will be really disappointing. So that's my thoughts for now. Let me know what you think, and we can discuss all of it in the comments below. And I will see you all next time. Bye bye.